You ever have one of those mornings where everything you care about, the one piece of earth that actually means something, just gets ripped right out from under you before your coffee even cools? Yeah, that was me, standing in my socks on a porch my grandfather built, staring down a line of bulldozers carving up the land where I scattered his ashes. I know, it sounds dramatic, but let me tell you, when the HOA starts building 67 houses on property that's supposed to have your name on the deed, you get dramatic, fast. See, this wasn't just dirt and trees. This was my whole childhood. Every summer, every busted knuckle, and every fish story. It was where I'd planned to spend my retirement, teaching my daughter's kid to cast a line in that sliver of lake nobody else even knew about. But all that disappeared behind a chain-link fence and some smug woman in a designer vest, holding a clipboard like a sword. The first time I tried to talk to her, she laughed in my face, called security, and had me walked off my own land, like I was the trespasser here. I could have lost it right then, but an old habit from the army kicked in. Never get loud, just get the facts. So I spent 2 straight hours tearing up my grandfather's study, digging through dust and old metals until I found the original deed. Not a copy. The deed, yellowed and heavy, with a county seal. Pressed so hard it still felt cold. My grandfather's signature next to the cellars, and a neat little line showing exactly where our land started and ended. They thought I'd just disappear. The HOA president, Cheryl, acted like I was some bump on her blueprint. But I showed up at their meeting anyway, face to face with her, her board, her lawyer in a suit so sharp I'm sure it squeaked. The whole room stared as I laid that deed right on their fancy table. I told them, straight up, this land's not for sale, never was. My family's whole history is in those woods, fixing the roof, teaching my daughter to fish, and now you're erasing all of it for a golf cart path? Cheryl barely glanced at the deed before she pushed it back like it was contaminated, then called for a vote to have me barred from the site for my own safety. The board's hands shot up and the room actually clapped, applauding the theft of my land, cheering my humiliation. You want to talk about rage? Not the hot kind. The kind that settles deep and cold, the kind that makes you patient. They didn't even notice the one old guy in the corner giving me a slow nod, like he knew exactly what was up. After that, things got ugly. Barbed wire fences, security guards parked at the gate, letters in gold-embossed envelopes warning me not to even look at the construction or else. Fines for surveillance, threats of lawsuits, drones I didn't own, accusations I couldn't even keep up with. My daughter, Heather, tried to keep my spirits up, but even she broke down when a gravel truck crushed the tomato garden her mom planted. That was the moment it nearly broke me too. But you can't let bullies win. Not if you want your grandson to learn the right lesson. Everything changed the day a plain white envelope showed up in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just my name. Inside was a leaked HOA memo, Cheryl's lawyer admitting, in writing, that they knew my family still legally owned the land, that there was a significant gray area, and no court had ever transferred title. Cheryl had scribbled a note. Progress can't wait for paperwork. She knew. She didn't care. So I went hunting for their weak spot, spent a day at the county archives with a mountain of old maps and plats, and sure enough, there it was. Back in '79, the county adjusted my property line. After widening the old road, the HOA's entire project was built off the wrong map. Every single one of those shiny new homes, every paved street, every manicured lawn, all of it was sitting smack in the middle of land they didn't own. Not one legal inch. I brought in the county's most stubborn old surveyor, a guy named Wally, who didn't smile much, until he saw the mess they'd made. "This is going to be good," he said, and I believed him. We spent 2 days walking boundaries, staking out every angle, filing a fresh affidavit and certified survey at the courthouse. I didn't even bother telling Cheryl or her board. Why warn them? I waited, patient as bedrock, while they poured millions into their little kingdom, convinced I was beaten. Weeks passed, and I watched the houses go up from my porch, storing every new letter, every threat, every bit of evidence in a fat file labeled HOA. The harassment only got worse. Made-up fines, more cameras, more intimidation. The worst was watching Heather cry after her garden got flattened. For a minute, I almost sold, just to give her peace. But I remembered my grandfather. He never ran from a bully. And I sure wasn't going to start. When Wally called to say the paperwork was done, I rented a ballroom at the local hotel, invited every new homeowner, every realtor, even a few county officials. Cheryl showed up with her lawyer, ready for her big victory lap. I let her have it. Explained, in front of a packed room, that the entire Phase 3 development was on land she didn't own. Then had the county assessor stand up and confirm it for everyone. The shock was instant. Realtors paled, Cheryl screamed fraud, but nobody was listening to her anymore. The fallout hit fast, news. Stories, angry buyers, even the HOA's own contractors leaking emails that proved Cheryl had been forging permits and strong-arming everyone to finish before the truth got out. They offered me a settlement, a fat check, 3 times the market value. I turned them down flat. It was never about money. It was about respect, legacy, and not letting greed trample the past. In the end, I stood up at their final, chaotic board meeting, right after the sheriff served Cheryl with fraud papers, and told the crowd, "I'm not here to put families out on the street. I'm here to do what your HOA never could, give you a real community." We started a resident co-op, half the fees, 0 Karen patrols, just neighbors looking out for each other. Only rule, Cheryl's out, for good. Now, every time I walk through those streets and see kids playing where bulldozers once roared, I remember what it cost to save this place, and how close I came to losing it. The old cabin still stands by. The lake, and the tomato gardens growing again. Only now it's surrounded by new families, new stories, and a legacy no HOA will ever steal. So, let me ask you, when the powerful get greedy, when the bullies come for what's yours, do you stand your ground or let them buy you out? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear your justice story, your neighborhood drama, your fight for what matters. And if you ever find yourself standing alone at the fence line, remember, sometimes the quiet ones build the strongest foundations that you'd think. After everything blew up, the news coverage, the board resignations, even the deputies hauling Cheryl out of the clubhouse, the story would end there, tied up with a neat little bow. But if you've ever dealt with people who think they're above consequences, you already know it's never that simple. See, there's this weird silence that settles in after a war. At first, it almost felt peaceful, walking my land without a security goon tracking me, watching the sunrise hit all those new rooftops that, technically, now belong to me. You'd think I'd feel triumphant, right? Maybe for a minute. But mostly, I just felt tired. I had a stack of legal bills to sort through, angry emails from former HOA loyalists blaming me for their lost amenities, and new neighbors who didn't know whether to thank me or duck when they saw me coming. The co-op idea caught on faster than I ever expected. Folks who used to glare at me in meetings started dropping by the cabin, not to fight, but to talk, really talk. There was Angela, the single mom from Lot 34, whose kitchen window now overlooked my old tomato patch. She baked me a pie and, with her kid in tow, apologized for not believing me. Said her ex was a cop and she'd learned the hard way about people abusing power. That conversation stuck with me. But not everyone came around so quick. There were plenty who still wanted blood, some on Cheryl's side. Some who just couldn't wrap their heads around how fast their American dream turned sideways. There were rumors flying, lawsuits, countersuits, a whisper that Cheryl was trying to regroup with a few loyalists to challenge the co-op's formation. I guess some folks would rather die on the wrong hill than admit they'd been duped. And you know what? The real work didn't even start until after the dust settled. Suddenly, I wasn't just a guy minding his business by the lake. I was the reluctant landlord, the de facto mayor of a neighborhood that never wanted me in the first place. First order of business, rewriting all the land leases so every family had real security. I brought in a local lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Gina who reminded me of my late wife. Sharp, fair, didn't suffer fools. She helped me draft up contracts that protected the residents, but didn't leave me holding the bag if something went sideways. Of course, Cheryl and her remaining diehards tried to block it, filing a last-ditch motion with the county to freeze the co-op accounts. They showed up at the courthouse with a new attorney, armed with binders and all the arrogance money could buy. But Wally, good old Wally, was there too, just leaning against the wall with his coffee, ready to testify that every inch of the survey was airtight. When the judge ruled in our favor, you could almost feel the whole neighborhood exhale. There were little victories, too. fixing up the playground by the creek, planting a new row of tomatoes with Heather and my grandson, watching folks who'd barely nodded at each other before actually organize a summer barbecue. Funny thing, when people stop worrying about fines for their mailbox color or how many cars are in their driveway, they get a lot friendlier. I even caught Tanner, the former HOA enforcer, helping an elderly neighbor move a couch. Turns out, without a clipboard in his hand, he's not such a bad guy. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The county sent a letter asking if I'd consider running for the town council. Me, the guy who'd been called a trespasser on his own land 6 months ago. I nearly laughed myself off the porch. Heather thought it was poetic justice, said maybe that's how change really happens. One stubborn person at a time, refusing to give in to bullies. I haven't made up my mind yet, but I'll admit, the idea is growing on me. And every now and then, I see Cheryl driving through the neighborhood in her spotless SUV, sunglasses on, windows up, like nothing ever happened. People mostly ignore her now. She lost her kingdom, but I imagine she's still spinning a story where she's the victim. That's just how some folks are built. If you're wondering what happened to all those lawsuits, well, the HOA ended up dissolving for good. The co-op replaced it, run by an elected board, regular folks, not power-hungry wannabe dictators. The county did a feature about us, how a neighborhood reclaimed itself. That headline made me smile. We didn't just fight back, we built something better. So yeah, these days, I walk my property line for the peace of it, not because I'm worried someone's moving the stakes again. I see kids playing, gardens growing, and a community that remembers where it came from. The cabin's still there, lake's still shining, and the porch feels more like home than ever. Most days, Heather and my grandson are out back, hands in the dirt, talking about the future instead of dreading the next envelope in the mail. You know, it's easy to say you'd stand up when everything's on the line, but living through it, that's a different animal. Some nights I lie awake, thinking about how close I came to just walking away, selling out, letting the story end before it really began. But every time I hear a neighbor laugh across the fence or see a new family move in, I know we did something right, maybe not perfect, but right. So let me throw this out to you. If you've made it this far, what would you have done? Would you have fought, or would you have let go for the sake of peace? Ever had your own battle with a power-tripping HOA, a boss, a neighbor, anybody? Drop your story below, because if there's one thing I learned, it's that the only way to stop bullies for good is to keep talking, keep showing up, and never let anyone tell you what your home is worth. And who knows, maybe next year you'll see my name on a ballot. Stranger things have happened. Just ask anyone who used to clap when I got thrown out of a meeting.